Okay. Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. We're doing a live stream tonight, going over the news. I'm doing this stream on February 1st. This is on the big channel on YouTube. I'm also going to set up the stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So thank you for joining tonight. I appreciate it. I don't normally do a live stream at night. I'm usually doing it in the morning, but I figured because of what's going on in the news, there's lots to cover. So it's important to perhaps do a few live streams in the evening, but for the week. But for the ones that don't know, when I do the live streams in the morning, I'm doing it on Rumble, on YouTube, and also I have X Spaces simulcast, so you can do a call-in to ask questions. Tonight, we're not doing the call-in. Tomorrow, I will be doing a live show with John Hogue. That's at 10 o'clock p.m. New York time, all right? Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time. So 10 o'clock p.m. tomorrow, we're going to be having a live stream on my website and a live stream on YouTube with a simulcast on X Spaces where you can do a call-in. It's interactive. So, please, join the show tomorrow on X Spaces for the call-in. And you can also, listen through the live stream on YouTube and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I will also be posting on all the other channels after the live stream for different premieres. So you can, listen if you can't join the live stream. This is listened to and watched by many people around the world. So please join. It's I think having people call into the show and ask questions to the guests is an important feature, because the show is supposed to be interactive. That's the whole point of the show. So thank you for joining. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the videos here. I want to play CNN and hear about the helicopter fatal collision. This is done by CNN. It was posted about 9 hours ago. Let's start here. I gotta set up the speaker.
Dedicated her life to defending this country.
All right, so here we go.
Let me tell you a story of how, caught in the ensuing crossfire, was an American soldier, Jo Ellis. She's a service member who has dedicated her life to defending this country. Spent 15 years in the Virginia Army National Guard, is a chief warrant officer, a combat gunner, a UH-60 Black Hawk pilot. Jo is deployed to Iraq, Guatemala, and Kuwait. She's also a transgender woman who transitioned while in service and coincidentally once worked as the digital media manager for Swercottage.com. Now, go back to Monday. On Monday, President Trump.
So basically what we have here, thank you for the ones that are joining. Basically what we have here is CNN trying to demonize Trump with the whole DEI issue with the plane crash and the helicopters and all this stuff. So they're going to try, CNN is going to try to whip this into Trump is totally wrong about the DEI and blah, blah, blah. And so they're going to use a bunch of emotional fallacy. They're going to use a bunch of, woke agenda. So watch how CNN plays this one.
A newly confirmed Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, to implement a policy to come up with the means to preclude transgender personnel from the U.S. military, arguing that being transgender is not consistent with military ideals. When I read that, I invited Jo to be a guest on my SiriusXM radio program. On Tuesday, she wrote a moving piece about her experience. We published it on my website. And then on Wednesday, she joined me for a national radio interview on SiriusXM. It was that night that the tragedy occurred on the Potomac. And by Thursday night and Friday morning, Jo Ellis was falsely accused of piloting the Black Hawk helicopter that collided with the American Airlines jet. And then absolutely horrific headlines like this. Offensive, conspiracy-fueled tweets ensued that went viral. Jo Ellis was the #2 most trending topic in the United States on X late Friday morning with more than 90,000 posts, according to Trends24, a website that tracks trending topics. I suspect the visibility that came from the radio interview, along with the article we published at Swercottage.com, put Jo's name in play such that she became an easy target for some of the twisted voices that have outsized influence online. Jo became collateral damage, linked, blamed via high-speed internet to a tragedy with which she had nothing to do. Collateral in the president's unfounded theories and attempt to divert attention away from real conversations about who's going to lead our country and what truly happened in the crash.
All right, so what is the issue here? Is it that she was falsely accused, which is an issue? She should not be falsely accused. He, she, whatever. All right, but they open up that it's a transgender issue. So this is where CNN always tries to push this whole woke, ultra lib agenda, and they always fail. And this is the reason why their ratings are plummeting.
She'll forever represent a cautionary tale of how the combination of loose talk and trigger fingers on keypads can sully a person's reputation and subject them to online ridicule, scorn, and threats. Joining me now is Jo Ellis. Nice to see you, Jo. How did this all happen from your perspective? Where were you? What were you doing when you found that you were being blamed for the Washington catastrophe?
Thank you for having me, Michael. I want to reiterate that I'm speaking in a personal status, not representing the National Guard, U.S. Army, or Department of Defense. My heart goes out to the families of the victims, and they don't deserve these rumors. I learned of this at 4:30 a.m. Friday morning from a text message of a close friend that a bot account was commenting on his Facebook post, asking if he knew Jo Ellis, who killed those people in the DC crash. Then someone sent me a link to a Pakistani newspaper article naming me in the crash. And then I received a Daily Mail phone call asking if I was alive and if I knew what was happening to me.
What sort of threats, what sort of ridicule, what sort of pain have you been
being
through?
Falsely accused of something like this is wrong, is absolutely wrong. Now, how this person was falsely accused, I don't know all the details, but they set the show up that it's some transgender thing. What the real issue is that someone is falsely accused, but don't push the trans stuff. You didn't need to. It's unrelated.
The result of this process.
Well, Michael, I was not surprised by the hate. This is my reality. And now that I'm more visible, more comes. The false claims put me and my family at risk. I was surprised by the outpouring of love and support, though, from strangers all over the world sending me messages. And I believe love shines brighter than hate.
So I don't believe in coincidence. You know that about me. I see causal connection. I don't think that Joe Ellis would have been wrongly blamed for the DC catastrophe, but for the comments that the president made in that press conference, where without foundation, he tossed DEI into this conversation. What's your reaction?
My reaction, Michael, is that I've heard anecdotes from many of the trans community saying that they have been targeted since the comments of the president, and their safety is at risk. And I'm very fortunate from a very privileged position, but other people are not so much.
If they are targeted, it is wrong. It is wrong. I don't care who it is. I don't care a pink flamingo, an elephant, a giraffe, a goat, transgender, male, female. It doesn't matter. Christian, Jew, Muslim, being wrongfully accused of something is wrong. It's just wrong. But that's the issue, not the whole woke stuff.
And this is really putting people's lives at risk.
Relative to your backstory, I'm going to put on the screen some of what you wrote earlier in the week. I've had symptoms of what I now know to be gender dysphoria since I was 5 years old. I learned early to hide these symptoms from my family because I thought they meant I was a bad person. This led to healthy and not so healthy coping mechanisms. I thought that if I could just be more religious, more successful, more manly, that I would cure my condition. I got married, bought a house, helped raise a stepdaughter, played drums in the church band, adopted a dog, all the things I believed a good man should do. And I really wanted to do those things, but I also secretly hoped it would fix me. It didn't work. You come from a family with a rich tradition of military service. You know now that your future service is at risk. Speak to the controversy that surrounds whether transgender individuals such as yourself should be able to serve.
Well, I believe in a meritocracy, and I have met all of the standards to serve. I came out while it was allowed and part of policy. So I did what I believe was totally legal while serving, to come out and to serve openly. And in my mind, I still meet those standards today. And any deviation from the standard, it should be what decides if a person should be fit to serve or not. Changing the standards to target a very specific group is very different.
Joe, let's talk.
Is your marketing tech stack stuck in the past?
Indeed it is. Upgrade to AppsFlyer, the world's leading MMP, with the most.
Joe, let's talk now about something you'd probably rather be addressing, which is your actual experience in flying helicopters. You know the corridor. You obviously were not involved in any flights there this week, but you know the corridor. Talk to me about your reaction to this catastrophe based on your knowledge.
Yes, Michael, I've flown those routes like many pilots. I've seen on the news many people speaking to this. I've always felt safe operating in that airspace thanks to the rigorous Army training that I've received and the helpful air traffic controllers that guided me along those corridors. I'm not an accident investigator, and I'm not really qualified to speak about the crash specifically.
Is it a particularly, I get that and I respect it, is it a particularly difficult area from your perspective as a helicopter pilot in which to fly as compared to other places you've been? You've flown all over the globe.
I would say that it is busy, like many areas that have busy airports. There's FAA training that is required to fly into those areas, and we take all the necessary precautions anytime we fly into the area.
What has been the reaction from those with whom you have served to A, your transition, and B, the way in which wrongly you were injected into this controversy this week?
Overwhelming support, Michael, from my battalion commander, from the Adjutant General of Virginia, from up and down, left and right of the ranks, from civilians, from veterans.
So just to pause for a quick sec, there's breaking news here that Democratic National Committee chooses new party leadership.
Received messages from South Africa, from places all over the world, supporting me and serving me allowing me to serve openly.
And finally, I described what happened to you, Joe, as a cautionary tale for all of us of how just someone who is in service, in your case, in service to their country, going about their private life, all of a sudden gets thrust into the public domain. In a prior era, you know, your injury to reputation would have been limited by how many voices could tell a story, whisper down the lane. But in this instance, when you were the #2 trending subject on X yesterday, it's all just a send key away. Final thought?
Final thought is my Army training has prepared me to handle the unexpected. And
that's a stupid answer. You know what the problem is? With social media, we have developed the capability of individuals to be malicious and to feel as though there's no repercussions. We've lost ethics, we've lost civility, and we have developed this environment, what I call the infestation, where people are very mean, people are cordial, people have opinions and aren't willing to listen respectfully to others. The civility of society, especially in the United States, has really declined since social media. And many, many people have now plugged into this, and they get sucked in, and it becomes kind of like almost a wrestling match. You know, and it's kind of like this, you know, this kind of show. And individuals are not reading as much anymore. Individuals are not writing as much. Individuals are not sitting and being civil and listening to the other side of the debate, or whatever it is, and trying to understand their perspective. Everything is just, they're wrong, you must be right. Right? So we need to step back and look at the 3 pillars that make a society great. It's God, country, and family. The moment you erode one of those pillars or all those pillars, your society is in decline. And the ethics that we have in society today, especially when it's magnified in the infestation in the social media world, is to a point where we are radically becoming like beasts of the field. We're no longer human. Human beings don't act like this. It's an infestation. This is what bugs do. This is what beasts of the field do. So people are doing the scrolling on TikTok, or people are doing the scrolling on X or Facebook, or even scrolling on YouTube. You know, everything's now turning into lower content, lower bite-sized chunks of information, even though the information is poor. It's not that informative. Sometimes it's not even that accurate. It's like junk food. but junk food for the brain, not just, not junk food for for your pancreas, right? There was a time where people would hunt and actually prepare the animal, and it was fed to the tribe or fed to their family. All right. And there was a lot of time to procure the animal, and there was a lot of time propping the animal. And then there was a feast, right? And there was a socialness to it. Now you go to the grocery store and you get a candy bar, get a quick sugar fix. Social media is just like that. Before, people would have to go and read a book. But there are many people that can't finish a book from cover to cover now. Many people can't even write properly. But the thing is that people have plugged into social media to the point where it has caused a decline in their education, either formally or informally, their ability to be civil. And what has happened is that it's just they're looking for a quick answer. Every question must have a quick answer, because that's what the scrolling does. It's like that the dopamine hit, and that and you're just looking for a quick answer. Well, many problems need to dive into the details and the nuances. It can't be explained in 160 characters or in 2-minute videos. It needs to be a long form. If you look at a author for history, and they write a book that's 300 pages on, let's say, the life of Churchill. Now, Churchill was a unique character. He's kind of like, he straddled two different worlds: a modern world, post-World War II, but also pre-World War I. So he was an interesting character. And because of that arc of history, to really pay homage to his biography, it can't be 300 pages long. It has to be like 600 or 900 pages long. But people don't have the time to read it, or don't have the wherewithal, or they don't have the inclination. So they're looking for a quick ChatGPT summary. So you're seeing this problem, the infestation, the lack of civility, the lack of being able to dive into a problem deeply, going into also work, where people are now trying to leverage systems, AI systems or search engine systems, to automate processes and to just do summaries. So you don't have to read the article now. You just feed it into ChatGPT and it'll automatically give you a 10 bullet point summary. Meanwhile, your reading level goes down, your vocabulary goes down, and the speed of reading goes down. But you can get the summary really quick, but you've lost all these other skills. Civility and spending the time to understand the nuance is what's lacking in society now. That is the right answer.
I reacted in that way, and I made preparations and contacted the proper people to keep my family safe, to keep me safe, and nobody deserves this kind of false rumors and attention.
All right, so that was CNN. I'm not impressed with CNN at the moment. All right, so let's go to live now this is talking about the executive orders. This guy is Rosenthal. He's a trial attorney. I'm not sure what he's saying here, but let's check.
Violate state law or violate federal law. If they are actively violating federal law, potentially illegally harboring or trying to thwart, if you will, affirmatively take actions that prevent the federal government from doing their directives, then you have that confrontation. So what you're going to see is, in all likelihood, states that aren't going to cross those lines. I don't think they're going to be quite that brave, but they're going to basically say, look, we're aggressively not going to enforce your agenda, Mr. Trump. We're going to sit on our hands, and we're just not going to do a darn thing to advance this. And you
let me just pause for a sec, even though, right, his voice reminds me. Now, you got to remember, I'm Gen X, all right? And I remember on the radio in the early 70s, on the early 70s, all right? We're talking like 74, 75, all right? I remember that my grandmother had this like radio. It was and it was on the kitchen table. She had a dining room table and she had a kitchen table. And on the kitchen table there was this radio. It was kind of plastic. Maybe it was GE, General Electric, but it had some knobs on it. And it was very simplistic. Of the time. And I remember the voice of some of the radio station, the voice announcers for the radio stations in Detroit. And now we're talking AM. Wasn't FM. This was AM radio. And his voice sounds just like what I remember in 1974, 1975 on the radio that my grandmother was playing, in the morning. Just the tidbit.
That's sort of where these things lie. And to be clear, look, it's good politics. Donald Trump got elected with this agenda. He thinks it's good politics to kind of force this issue. If you're an elected official in the state of Oregon,
he's got that deep voice. You see, if he could easily, he easily can accentuate it a little bit, and it would be a radio voice.
Any of these cities that consider themselves sanctuary cities, it's good politics to fight Donald Trump there. So you're seeing sort of the elected officials kind of retreat back into into their serving their people, their constituents who put them into office.
Jeremy Rosenthal, always a pleasure to talk politics and trial with you here on Live Now. Boss, thank you so much for your candid conversation and perspective.
All right, so they're on commercial break here. So let's take a look at, this was 1 hour ago, posted by Fox News. Former pilot in-flight collision likely caused by Philly crash. All right, in-flight explosion. Okay, in-flight explosion likely caused Philly crash. Now let's see what they have to say. This is news to me here.
All right, for more on both plane crashes, let's bring in former pilot and aviation attorney Arthur Rosenberg. Arthur, thank you for taking time. We appreciate your insight, and let's just get your initial reaction. We've all seen the horrific crash in Philadelphia around 6:30 last night. What do you make of what may have happened? I learned from covering the Washington crash as a reporter and going to the NTSB briefings, they say that in all investigations, they kind of look at three things: the human element, the machine element, and the environment element. We think that it was a cold, but not particularly harsh environment night. We now just heard in a FOIA report from the jet company that there was nothing wrong with the plane. So could this be human error?
Yeah, so the NTSB looks at man-machine weather. I think the most dispositive piece of information we have now are the film that was captured. What I saw in that film, and I kind of juxtaposed that with the radar data, which is available now. So what do we know? We know the plane was climbing out, was in the air about 40 seconds, had reached about 200 knots and about 1,600 feet. When you pick up the film that we have of the crash sequence, it looked like all forward movement of this Learjet 55 stopped. It was preceded momentarily by what I saw was a big flash, probably an explosion. The plane nosed over almost vertically and then went on down within seconds and hit in North Philadelphia. So it devolves down to this: what could cause an in-air explosion like the one that was captured on the film? One of two things or both. One, this was an air ambulance. There were oxygen tanks on board.
This is a different thing.
We don't know specifically what of the oxygen tanks were, although some were captured on the ground. They looked like something.
So I was thinking that it was the DC crash. This is something totally different. This is the helicopter air ambulance crash that took place in Philadelphia.
There, which can be incredibly flammable if those tanks are punctured in flight. And number two, jet fuel. Now, the back of this Lear 55, near the engines, there are fuel bladders. If the engine had a failure through a compressor blade, a turbine blade, and punctured those bladders, it could cause a massive explosion. So either way you slice that, I saw in-flight explosion. Seems the most likely cause, based upon available information now, would be the oxygen tanks or a fuel tank perforation and tragedy that followed.
You know, Arthur, you're touching on something that Chris Bauer, aviation expert in our last hour, touched on.
Now, my take on this, all right? Okay, so there was this air ambulance thing, crash. Okay. There's also the crash that took place in DC with the helicopter and the plane that everybody knows about. There have been many problems with Boeing planes, especially in 2024. There was the crash of the F-35 that just happened just a couple days ago in Alaska. I believe it was Alaska, on an air base, I think it was. And so the question is, why are all these planes having problems? Then you look at another data point, and that is, well, what about the drones? We heard a lot about the drone, then all of a sudden the stories about the drones went away. Kind of strange how that happened. And then you have the UAPs and UFOs and all this stuff, right? So what's really going on? Now, is there, someone typed in the text message and it was, what do I think about electromagnetic shifts? Well, maybe there is some shifting that's taking place on the Earth that's that's shifting. It's causing something with the radar systems and whatnot. Maybe, I don't know. Is HARP causing some of these problems? Probably. But if you look at it from a metaphysical point of view, and sometimes I like looking at these events through a metaphysical lens, the metaphysical point of view is it was warned in old texts that the birds will fall out of the sky. Now, I didn't say what kind of bird. At that time, when it was written, it was assumed that those birds were either angelic, they're like angels, right? That straddle heaven and earth and they're coming down. That's one interpretation. Another is they're actually animal birds, right? Avians, that are falling out of the sky. Another data point to take a look at is well, we're starting to hear a lot about avian flu. So are we being hinted that there are things that are going to be falling out of the sky, and that it's going to create a much more eventful calamity that is more long lasting than just plane crashes or changing of weather? So if we look at these biblical texts about the birds falling out of the sky, what does it really mean? Are they angels? Are they UAPs? Are they future technology that we call airplanes or helicopters? We don't really know. Could it be spiritual beings that fall, from the firmament? Who knows? But it just is odd that I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about this arc of history, going back to all the way into the early 70s and turning on the radio, right? How often throughout these last 5 decades have we seen so many things happen in the sky in such a short amount of time? So many problems with the sky. And I would suggest that we're probably at peak event sky issues, all right, if you want to call it that. I don't remember in my lifetime seeing so many problems with planes and birds and weather. So what's going on? Is it a natural phenomena? Is it a man-made phenomena on purpose or accidental? Or is it a spiritual phenomenon?
And that is this rapid descent that we saw. Here's a little bit of what he said. I want to see if you agree.
It looked to me like it was initially accelerating normally, but then it stopped. It seemed to have leveled off, and then it started a descent. Ultimately wound up descending at over 11,000 feet a minute.
I think looking not just at biblical texts, someone typed in the chat, it's not just biblical text to look at, it's also mythology. Mythology hints at like things that happened in the past or maybe things that will happen into the future. So looking at all these texts, I think are important to get, just get a handle on it. It doesn't mean that's exactly what's going to happen, but it at least opens up our eyes to a wider reality, a potentially wider reality.
Do you agree with that? And would an explosion account for a rapid descent like that?
Yeah, so what he said objectively, I completely agree with. What I'm kind of like drilling down with is what could cause that based upon available information. And for me, there's only two things. Massive explosion, either caused by an oxygen explosion, probably a tank on board, oxygen tank, or perforation of a fuel bladder in or near the engines. Once that happens, the engines flame out, there's no forward movement, which accounts for why the forward movement visually in flight, as captured on the film, seems to show the plane basically stopping in midair, followed by the fatal plunge to the ground. So the NTSB is gonna do their full investigation, but I would note for your viewers that this plane is registered to the Mexican authorities. This is not a United States registered airplane.
Right.
Standards and procedures are different in the two countries. As far as the maintenance of this plane, I would say I would be very interested as a plaintiff's lawyer to know what they did to that plane when it was on the ground in North Philly. They refueled it. Was the refueling done right? Was there any maintenance done to the engines? Were the engine cowlings opened up? What was done? We know that there was a massive explosion. Now we have to find out why.
We do. And Arthur, just in the last 20 seconds or so I've got, just your insight on what you think may be the cause of the crash here in Washington.
Yeah, well, for my money, the bottom line here is you have a Black Hawk helicopter which meandered into the airspace of the American Airlines plane. It was a half a mile outside the corridor it was supposed to be in, and at least 100 feet above the altitude. They clearly didn't see each other. The air traffic controller's job on this, for my money, was terrible. I think he was preoccupied with getting a flight on and off the main runway, runway 1 at Reagan, which is the busiest runway in the United States of America. They normally have two controllers, one handling the military and one handling civilian.
The statistic that I heard, it was like on average, I think it was 800 planes a day go in and out of the airport in DC, Reagan Airport.
We don't know who he was or what his prior schedule was, but I think it was overlooked. In that instant of time when his attention was diverted to the civilian aircraft, this tragedy happened.
A tragedy indeed, and we'll find out more. The NTSB telling us yesterday that they have begun interviewing the air traffic control witnesses that were there. We'll see where it leads us. Dr. Rosenberg, thank you for your insight as always.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So potentially it was explosion on the plane that caused the Philly crash. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work by getting the great supplements that I offer. These are supplements that I take that are part of my daily routine. It's what I call my protocol. Some people can't afford, or they don't want to take all the different things that I take, but you may want to take different stacks or a few of them, or make it your own combo based on your own body chemistry or your own needs or your affordability. But let me just tell you what I do and why I take the different supplements to improve my health, and hopefully you follow the journey with me. All right. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. Ubiquinol is very important, especially when you get older, to be taking every day. Ubiquinol helps to improve your energy levels, improve your mitochondrial health, so it's improving your ATP levels. Ubiquinol is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. And ubiquinol helps to protect neurons. And neural health and neural protection is very important for people that are 40 plus. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ubiquinol. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. It's the most bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. That's why you should be taking ubiquinol and not just CoQ10, because ubiquinol will absorb more in your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ubiquinol. This stacks really well with C60, NAD+, NAC, and some of the other antioxidants that I offer on my store. But I've been taking ubiquinol for a very long time, and taking CoQ10 for a very long time. But again, ubiquinol is the best bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. So please go to my store, help support my work, and help support your health and your neural health. It's really important. All right. What I want to do is I want to go to Pompeo and what he said about Iran. This was posted 2 hours ago.
Let's bring in former Secretary of State under Trump's first term and former CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking time. Let's get your reaction right out of Lucas's report there. First, the tariffs. So it's Mexico, Canada, and China. One of those is not the same as the others. When you talk in terms of sort of what may be at play with the intention of the tariffs, what do you make of it?
It's great to be with you. Look, the tariffs make sense when you have an objective, and President Trump has always simply demanded fair, even, reciprocal trade. He's trying to get that with the Mexicans, with the Canadians as well, and certainly, of course, with the Chinese Communist Party. So I'm hopeful he'll be able to achieve that. I think some of the risk of inflation that people talk about is likely overstated. Some of this will end up being absorbed by the producers. And to know exactly where the economic risk will fall is difficult to know in advance, but make no mistake about it, the tariffs are legitimate means of achieving an end. I hope, as we've made very clear to them, our expectations, so that we can go back and reduce tariffs, reduce subsidies in every one of these places. Perhaps say for the Chinese Communist Party, where there are multiple objectives that have to be completed, not just on trade, but on national security as well.
And in terms
now,
of
what is interesting with Pompeo? I like Pompeo in general, but there was a falling out near the end of the administration, the first term for Trump and Pompeo. It was related to January 6th, and and Pompeo tried to gain some love by Trump, but it didn't come to fruition, and he wasn't added into the second term. All right, so there's some bad blood between Pompeo and Trump. The issue that I have, I listen to the audio book that Pompeo wrote. I think it was called America First, actually. It was a good book. And everything he said in the book was pretty positive about Trump. All right. But there's some bad blood between the two. All right. Now, what I want to focus on is that during his tenure with Trump as Secretary of State, he had a problem with his weight. All right. And a lot of people have problems with their weight. All right. I mean, it's a big problem in the United States with people being overweight and having a high BMI and having cholesterol problems and all this stuff, right? He has really worked hard to slim down, and he has maintained the weight loss. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, that when you build up adipose tissue, all right, and you are overweight, and toxins and chemicals will hide in that fat tissue. All right. And a lot of people, when they start losing weight, they may actually feel a little sick when they're losing the weight because these toxins are being released into your bloodstream and they're getting filtered out. All right. So that's one side effect of losing weight. It's better to lose weight, but people store toxins in their adipose tissue. And another thing that people don't realize is that once the adipose cell is formed, it stays in your tissue for a long time. Even when you lose weight, you may lose weight. You've lost not adipose cells. You've lost you lost what the adipose cells are storing, which is triglycerides. All right. So when you have a lot of fat, you have a lot of triglycerides. So when you lose weight, you're releasing some of these toxins into your bloodstream and you have to filter them out. And you may feel sick because of that. And you're releasing over time these triglycerides and you're burning them off. This is why keto is such a great way to lose weight. So when you lose the weight, you have to keep the weight off for 5 to 7 years, because it takes about 5 to 7 years for the adipose cell to die. And this is the reason why the yo-yo diet, the yo-yo diet happens. They lose a lot of weight, and then they change their diet. That's bad. Maybe they change their exercise. They're working less. They think that they're fine, and then they gain the weight back really quick, because the adipose tissue has not died. You just lost triglycerides, the stuff that the adipose cell is holding. That's what you lost. You didn't lose the fat cells unless you went through liposuction. So it takes 5 to 7 years of maintenance to actually shed those adipose cells. And the reason why is the body is saying, okay, faster, feast or famine. All right. Back in hunting and gathering, you ate a lot when the season was plentiful. You store energy for the winter, and then you burn it off to keep you warm all the way into the spring when new food is available. So you had to have some adipose tissue already shrunken down during the summer and early fall, only to build up the triglycerides for the winter, for the late fall, the winter, and early spring. And then you start burning, during that period of time, you're burning it down. But because we are now living in, quote, civilized world, you have to realize that maintenance is really important. You lose the weight, let's say you lost 50 pounds, great, awesome. But don't sit on your laurels, because your adipose cells still exist, and they will stay there for 5 to 7 years. So you have to maintain the weight loss for 5 to 7 years to radically change the distribution of the adipose cells. You've changed the content of the adipose cells, but you didn't get rid of the adipose cells. They have to go through apoptosis, and it takes years for that to happen. Because you're fighting against our biological mechanism to survive winters, to survive famine. But I'm impressed with how he's maintained his weight loss, because he was having a problem when he was Secretary of State.
Precursors coming from China, then coming across our southern border with Mexico, certainly perhaps part of it.
Undoubtedly, I remember this from the first Trump administration. President Trump made clear to Xi Jinping he needed those flows reduced. We got it for a time, and then it just has now wandered off over these last 4.5 years. How we have to get that back. This is decimating communities all across America, and the Chinese Communist Party has the capacity, the capability, Griff, to actually pull that off. They can stop this if they choose. They've chosen not to. We need to impose costs on them until they do.
Mr. Secretary, I want to turn to the Middle East. Obviously, great news today. More hostages, including Keith Siegel, one American, released today. We know there are 6 Americans that remain in captivity, 2 of which we believe are actually alive. What do you make of today's development and where this heads?
Well, it's never bad news when Americans come home. It's joyous, it is glorious, it is for those families, it is unimaginable glee to see these folks return home. And having said that, I think in one of the early reports there were 138 Palestinians, terrorists released. They'll commit terror again, so the risk to the next set of American families is very real. We need to make sure, importantly, Griff, that we continue to support the Israelis in their effort to decimate Hamas. They can never be in control, they can never be in charge, and they can never reorganize. The Israelis also have to create space on their northern border. We'll have more hostages if we can't get the Hezbollah to be completely destroyed by the Lebanese armed forces and allow the Israeli people who still aren't living in their homes, Griff, have 70,000 people still can't go back to the northern part of Israel. We have to give the Israelis the capacity to do that, and I am sure Prime Minister Netanyahu is heartened to have President Trump as his counterparty to that and not President Biden.
Is that significant that that is going to be the first international visit, and what do you suppose is the goal there?
Look, I think it will reinforce the deep ties between our two nations and the great work that these two leaders did in building out what became the Abraham Accords in the first Trump administration. And then I'm sure each of them will want to talk about how it is they're going to get at the real root of this problem, the regime in Iran. How is it they're going to take out that regime in a way that gives Israel the security assurances it needs and then reduces the risk for America, right? If you put America at the front of your foreign policy, you don't want to send our young men and women to fight and risk their lives in the Middle East. And taking out the regime in Iran is a core part of making sure we don't ever have to do that to any American family.
And lastly, Mr. Secretary, I want to get your reaction to 6 Americans freed in Venezuela, Rick Grinnell going down there, a big victory there. But then the president just a little while ago saying that Venezuela agrees to take back criminal illegal migrants, some of whom may be part of that Tren de Aragua gang members. What's your reaction to that?
That is all good news. Getting those folks home is fantastic news. Getting these violent criminals out of America, also really good news. What I don't know is what the trade for that was. That is, if there was some deal here. I hope we have not forgotten that Maduro is an illegitimate leader of the country, stole the election. Second, he's an indicted kingpin in the United States of America. And then finally,
what's so rich about this? Again, the bad blood between Trump and Pompeo partially was because of the JFK release records. Pompeo didn't want anything being released or a lot not to be released. And then the whole January 6th thing. Now it's really odd that he says there was election fraud in another country, and when you look at that, the statistics. It was that jump diffusion, that jump curve in Venezuela, all right? Stolen election. That jump diffusion curve was very similar to what we saw in 2020. Actually, the magnitude of the jump diffusion was more in the election in 2020. And so all those data scientists out there, that is proof positive. That curve, that jump diffusion curve, is proof positive of interference. But he was demonizing people during January 6th.
Forget, he's in the control of the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Russians. He is mere puppet there in Caracas. And he is evil incarnate. He is bad for our region, and we need to make sure that we continue to use American power in the Western Hemisphere in a way that protects and puts America first. And we don't go down a path of thinking we can negotiate with someone like Nicolas Maduro on the security matters that matter so much to the American people.
And just, we've got to let you go, Mr. Secretary, but it sounds just there's a bit of caution, trepidation in negotiating or dealing with Maduro, something that the previous administration didn't do. Do you have a word of caution for this current administration?
I remember how we handled it in the first one. We put enormous sanctions, real pressure on Maduro. We almost got him out of there. I hope that will be the same model. I hope that will be a model that understands that if you can get to a great outcome for America, so be it. But the chance that Nicolas Maduro is going to do anything but the bidding of the Russians and the Chinese Communist Party and the Cubans seems very unlikely to me.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking time and joining us today.
Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your weekend.
Don't forget ex-CIA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support your health and the work that I do by getting the NAD+. NAD+ is a supplement that I've added to my stack. NAD+ boosts up energy levels. NAD+ helps to repair DNA damage in your nucleus and in your mitochondria. Some people don't know that your mitochondria also has genetic code. So you have damage in your mitochondria DNA and in your cellular DNA. So DNA Plus helps to repair that. In addition, DNA Plus helps to protect your neurons. It's synergistic with ubiquinol and C60. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the NAD Plus, help to repair your DNA, boost up your energy levels, and protect your neurons. This is a great way to improve your neural health and repair the DNA damage that accumulates when you get older. Very important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Don't forget to use discount 5. It's all caps, discount number 5. You get $5 off on any order. All right, I'm going to go to Al Jazeera, and they're talking to Professor Mearsheimer.
And he is going to change, well, just about everything. But where is he going? Let's get to the bottom line. President Trump wasted no time in his first few days in office telling Americans and the world that there's a new sheriff in town. He quit the Paris Climate Accords and the World Health Organization, and he froze most foreign aid until his staff had time to review, throwing America's humanitarian programs into chaos. He mobilized the military to round up migrants living in the U.S. without residency papers, and when Colombia protested the way its citizens were being sent back, the country was threatened with massive tariffs. Colombia then blinked and backtracked on its complaints. He's also been belligerent with his closest neighbors, Mexico and Canada, officially rebranding the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. He's hammered Denmark's prime minister, trying to bully her into selling Greenland to the United States. He was involved in the Gaza ceasefire even before he took office, and now he's working to blow out the flames of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So where is all this leading? What is Trump's worldview? Are we seeing the emergence of a new American realpolitik in the world, or are global tensions going to go from bad to worse? Today, we're talking with one of America's preeminent political scientists, John Mearsheimer.
Why is it mutually exclusive? why can't America grow and helter skelter at the same time?
Political science at the University of Chicago. John, it is terrific to be with you today. And look, if there ever was an inflection point in foreign policy, Donald Trump coming in seems to be one of those. And so let me just ask you, what do you think Donald Trump's strategic map looks like or should look like from the Mearsheimer perspective?
Well, he's inherited a set of problems from Joe Biden. And the two principal problems that he's inherited that he has to deal with are the conflict or the genocide in Gaza, number one. And number two, he has to figure out how to settle the Ukraine war. We could say there's a third big issue he has to think about, which is how to deal with Iran, and especially Iran's nuclear program. But the agenda has been clear since the day that Trump got elected as to what are the problems he has to solve. What's disturbing is that there's no evidence that Trump and his advisors have come up with any sort of meaningful solution for dealing with any of these three problems. I think that's most apparent in the case of Ukraine. I mean, you would have expected him, once he got in the White House, given all his claims about how he was going to settle this thing very quickly, maybe even before he moved into the White House, that he'd be making progress in that regard. But there's no evidence of that. So I don't see much change now that Trump is in charge.
Well, let me ask you one element of the global scene that you didn't mention that I want to get into later in the show is China. So we've got Ukraine, Russia, you've got Gaza, you've got Iran, but China's sort of out there and has been one of the touch points for Donald Trump's campaign and his focus, but he seems to have wound down some of the tensions. You and I have talked before saying there's no more important challenge for the United States down the road than organizing its affairs to deal with the China challenge. You know, has that fallen off the Trump map?
There's no question that containing China is of great importance to the United States. In my opinion, it is the principal mission. But the problem that we face, and Biden faced this problem as well, is that we're pinned down in Ukraine and we're pinned down in the Middle East. And the last thing we need is trouble in East Asia with China. So we have gone to great lengths not to get into any kind of crisis or shooting match with the Chinese. The Chinese, on their part, have a number of domestic problems, both economic and political, which gives them little incentive to cause trouble and take advantage of the fact that we're pinned down in the Middle East and in Ukraine. And that's the reason that I think China is on the back burner, and it's Ukraine, Iran, and Gaza that are on the front burner.
Well, let's take these in some order. Let's look at the Ukraine-Russia. Just before President Trump's inauguration, I happened to run into General Keith Kellogg. Kellogg is Donald Trump's envoy for resolving the Ukraine-Russia mess. And Donald Trump had been saying, as you know, that he would solve it in 24 hours. And then Trump said, well, maybe it'll take 6 months. General Kellogg said, it's going to take me 100 days. So as you kind of look at it, look at the attention, and you have been an advocate for negotiating, seeing negotiations between Russia and Ukraine as a key piece that needed to move forward. Now that it's moving forward, do you worry that Donald Trump could agree or push a deal that gives Russia a green light to expand further in what used to be considered its sphere of influence?
I don't think that Donald Trump is going to reach a meaningful agreement with the Russians, and I can explain why. And I think the end result is that this war is going to go on. And I think the Russians have a vested interest in taking more territory than the 4 oblasts and Crimea, which they've already annexed. So I think that in the end, what we'll get here is a frozen conflict, not any form of meaningful peace agreement. And the Russians will have a big slice of territory, which will have devastating consequences for Ukraine. Now, why?
So I'm just answering some questions in here. Dublin's talking about, why don't we focus on our own country and leave other countries alone? That's in a perfect world, we should be doing that. The problem is we're not living in a perfect world. And unfortunately, we're trying to clean up the mess that the CIA has been doing since the 1950s. A lot of the problems that we have in the world are because of the aftermath of intervention by our intelligence agencies. Now, that's not the only reason, but it's a big part of it. But in terms of Taiwan, I think that the United States needs to protect Taiwan. And if China decides to go after Taiwan, I think the allied forces in the Pacific need to work together to fight China. Now, the other question was about C60. The question was, does C60 put graphene in your body? The answer is no, it doesn't. Now, what C60 is a buckyball. You can't break the buckyball. All right, it's circular. It's like it's a molecule of 60 carbon, and it will help to soak up free radicals. It's very potent. It's one of the most potent antioxidants you can take, and that's the reason why, and I'll be talking about it in the show. It's the reason why I take it every day. I take a teaspoon of it a day. It soaks up free radicals. It boosts up the health of your mitochondria, so your ATP goes up. And by reducing the stress in the cell, what will happen is that the cell will perform better, and the tissues that the cells are in will perform better, and the tissues in the organs will perform better. Therefore, you're seeing huge benefits in a multi-organ system. All right, so you're going to have better immune system, better endocrine system, more energy, and a healthier body. And what you'll notice is that over time, if you take the teaspoon a day, every day, you're going to actually see that you are slowing down the aging process. And not only that, your exterior features like your skin will actually improve because you're improving the basal layer of where your new skin cells are coming from. So there's a lot of people that say, well, what's graphene? Will it put graphene in your body and all that? No. And not only that, you can't break a carbon 60 molecule. The body doesn't break it. It soaks up the free radicals and you urinate it out. But if you try to shoot a buckyball into a wall, right? Microscopically shoot molecules into a hard surface, you can't break C60. It's a very super hard molecule. And it doesn't break apart. There's no enzyme to break it. So it can't unfold. It's impossible to unfold. So C60 is a very safe, very effective antioxidant that I highly recommend. I use it every day. I take a teaspoon a day. You should take it before before you eat, for better absorption. If you have an empty stomach, it has the best absorption then. And it has to be in a lipid for absorption. So certain molecules have to be they're either water soluble or lipid soluble. C60 is lipid soluble. So it has to be in a lipid, and so you can get it in avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil or in MCT coconut oil. And by being suspended in a lipid and you're taking it on an empty stomach, you're absorbing it. And then what will happen is as it's moving around in your body, and because it's in your bloodstream now and it's getting into your tissues, it's soaking up those free radicals. Now, the beauty about it is that not only is it soaking up free radicals in your tissues and in your cells, right? But it's also soaking up the free radicals that are floating around in your bloodstream. And those free radicals that are floating around in your bloodstream is one of the mechanisms that causes plaque. So by soaking up the free radicals, you're reducing the oxidized LDL. So you're reducing cardiovascular disease on top of it. So C60 is very safe. And there are a lot of people out there that don't understand organic chemistry or what graphene or they don't understand any of it, all right? And if a C60 molecule cannot be broken. You can't break C60. So in the way the way the charges are as the electrons are moving around in the buckyball is it allows you to soak up those free radicals. Now you compare it to, let's say, vitamin C. Vitamin C is only one molecule, and so once it neutralizes the free radical, the C60 if you compare C60 to vitamin C is one molecule. And it can, right? C60 is one molecule, but 60 carbons. A vitamin C molecule, once it absorbs a free radical, that molecule changes and can't absorb any other free radicals. The way the C60 works is it recharges. It doesn't change. And it's soaking up the free radicals. So that's why it's so potent. One C60 is like hundreds, if not thousands, of vitamin C molecules, just one. And so that's why it's so potent. But you can't break C60. There's no enzyme that the body has to break C60. It can never unfold. So hopefully that answers your question.
Is it the case that I think that you won't get a meaningful peace agreement? It's because of the conditions that Putin has put forth. Putin has said to get negotiations going, just to get negotiations going, both Ukraine and the West have to recognize that Ukraine will never join NATO and Ukraine will be a genuinely neutral state. Furthermore, Ukraine and the West have to accept the fact that Russia has annexed these 4 oblasts plus Crimea. Those are absolutely essential for Putin to start negotiations. I find it impossible to imagine how the West and Ukraine are both going to agree to those conditions. And if they don't agree to those conditions, Putin's going to continue to push forward on the battlefield.
Listening to you, John, are you saying that you expect Donald Trump to fail in achieving a peace accord between Ukraine and Russia?
Yes, I don't think you're going to get a peace accord. I think what you're going to get is a frozen conflict. In other words, I think the Russians are eventually going to reach the point on the battlefield where it's clear they're victorious and the conflict will stop, much the way the Korean War ended in 1953. You'll get some form of armistice. But I think it is, and I'm choosing my words carefully here in light of your question, I think it's virtually impossible to get a meaningful peace agreement where we shut down this war and Ukraine and the West on one side and the Russians on the other side work out a modus vivendi that lasts. I don't think that is possible. Now, I want to emphasize that I've been wrong in the past and I may be wrong here. And I hope I am wrong because there's nothing more that I'd like to see than a meaningful peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia and the West.
Let me ask you about President Trump's recent comments about Gaza and the Palestinians. I should remind people that there are around 200,000 Palestinians that have been killed or injured since October 7th in this crisis. And Donald Trump says we should just clean it out, move all the people away, which I don't know, by any other term might be known as ethnic cleansing. But talking about moving people away and just giving this entire swath of Gaza to Israeli control. What are your thoughts?
I think it's, number one, morally reprehensible. Number two, it is clearly illegal. And number three, it's not going to work. The Israelis have been pounding the living daylights out of the Palestinians since October 7th. Indeed, I believe they've been engaged in a genocide. This is all for the purposes of driving the Palestinians out of Gaza, and they have failed. And you now have a ceasefire, which is an admission of defeat by the Israelis. Their strategy to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and that was their principal goal.
I'm pretty sure that Professor Mearsheimer bought his tie at Brooks Brothers.
Has failed. And this tells you that the Palestinians have no intention of leaving. And the Jordanians and the Egyptians who would, in Trump's scheme, take in these Palestinians have made it unequivocally clear that this is unacceptable. So I don't see how this is going to happen, which from my point of view is all for the good, because as I said, I find this morally reprehensible.
I'm wondering about Jordan and Egypt, who are also important, essential regional allies and partners of the United States. And do we reach a point where Donald Trump is just super tough with our best friends, frankly, in the region? And you see a reversal potentially on issues about relocating Palestinians from Gaza.
It is possible. There's no question that the United States acts as a bully on the world stage. And that's especially true with regard to President Trump. He has very powerful tendencies to act like a bully. And there's no question that sometimes works. It has significant cost, however, because states oftentimes don't cooperate with you. And the question is, will the Egyptians and the Jordanians break when Trump puts pressure on them? I think they will not. And I think they will not because they understand they run the risk of being overthrown by their populations. If they decided to cooperate with the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, it would cause them huge problems at home. And I don't think they want to run that risk. Furthermore, even if they do agree, you still have to drive the Palestinians out. And there's no evidence that the Palestinians are willing to participate voluntarily in a third Nakba.
I'm interested in whether you think some of the fundamental alliances that America has in the world, like with Japan, like with NATO nations, are up for review and essentially up to be redrawn.
The truth is, Steve, that alliances matter greatly for the United States. I mean, if you're interested in containing China, which the United States clearly is, you want to have excellent relations with your East Asian allies. You don't want to be slapping them around all the time and causing all sorts of friction inside of those alliances. Furthermore, even with regard to the Europeans, you want to have good relations with the Europeans because you want the Europeans to cooperate with you on the economic front with regard to China. And furthermore, if you're the United States and you're committed to shutting down the war in Ukraine, you have to work closely with your European allies. And again, slapping them around doesn't solve the problem. It just exacerbates the problem of shutting down the Ukraine war. And with regard to Canada and Mexico, they are our neighbors. We have a vested interest in having good relations with them. We have a lot.
All right, so this is breaking news on Bloomberg. Mexico's president told officials to plan retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., while Canada's Trudeau will speak soon.
Force of leverage over them because we're really powerful. But humiliating them at the same time we're trying to get our way is not the way I would bargain or deal with either Canada or Mexico.
If China is the big challenge and you're like trying to onshore and reshore manufacturing back to America, bring back capacity, or look at friendshoring, don't you need friends for friendshoring?
Yeah, you absolutely do. You know, I'm a realist par excellence, Steve. And as a good realist, I emphasize hard power.
Right.
But I'm smart enough to understand that hard power alone doesn't make for a good foreign policy. You also need soft power. You need diplomacy. You need to have an ideology that other countries find to be friendly. It's an ideology that other countries respect. And that's why the United States used to emphasize so strongly that it was a liberal democracy and that other countries should emulate us and see us as the city on the hill. This was all part of our soft power approach to dealing with the world. Now, again, I believe hard power is more important than soft power, but you need soft power. And what the Trump administration appears to be doing at this point in time is taking the soft power approach and throwing it in the garbage and thinking that we can rely exclusively on hard power. We can run around the world using the fact that we have a big stick to bully all.
Now, according to Professor Dublin, we should just be out of all countries. Now, maybe that is a foreign policy that we should be enacting at the State Department. I doubt that we will. I don't agree with it, but Professor Dublin thinks that's what we should do.
The countries to do what we want them to do. Some of that will work, as I said before, but it's not the best way to do business by any means, especially in a world where you need allies.
Let me ask you for a moment about one of the other major players in the world, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who in my book seems to be on a roll. He came in, he was in office, looked like he was up, dealing with legal problems and legal challenges. October 7th happened. And when you kind of take a step back, even though you can say Israel had one of the biggest intelligence failures of its history on October 7th, when you look since, you see the pagers and walkie-talkies blown up. You see the Hezbollah network essentially blown up. You see Hezbollah and Hamas leadership decimated, assassinated inside Iran. And you see the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria because of the lack of support of some of his allies like Iran and Russia.
I think Oscar, what he wrote in the chat, I think it's important to keep in mind. 20% of the money that everybody has sent to Ukraine could have stopped world hunger. The money that the United States has sent to Ukraine for the war effort, I wish we didn't. I think that NATO's expansion eastward caused this issue between Western alliances and the conflict with Russia. I think it's poor mismanagement of NATO and its expansionist policy since the fall of the Berlin Wall. So this is a strategic error by the United States. But also, I'm upset that we don't support our own veterans. Veterans in the United States need help. They need housing, they need medical care, and I much prefer to spend that money on our veterans than on Ukraine.
At that, and the way in which the Middle East terrain has changed for Netanyahu, would you agree with me that Netanyahu is on a bit of a roll right now?
No, I think you're dead wrong. I think you've been listening too much to Israeli propaganda and Israel lobby propaganda. First of all, let's talk about Gaza. The Israelis lost in Gaza. They were supposed to destroy Hamas, right? They weren't going to leave. They were going to ethnically cleanse at least northern Gaza. They were going to remain on the Philadelphia line, which separates Egypt from Gaza. They've given up on all those things. They admit that Hamas is...
Professor Mearsheimer, the war is not over. It's just a ceasefire. Secondly, almost all of Gaza is leveled. Is it true that Hamas, there's still some, military capability within the Hamas infrastructure? Yes. But to say that they lost, I think, is hyperbole at best. And I think disingenuous. The war is not over. Who said the war is over? It's a ceasefire. And we don't even know if the ceasefire is even going to last. Most likely it won't last. Now, how long will it take before it flares up again? Maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a few months, maybe next year. Who knows? But the war ain't over. It hasn't been over. It's been going on for a long time. It's never been over. But to say that the Israelis lost, do you think the Palestinians are in a better position now than October 6th of 2023? Now, let's be honest, Professor Mearsheimer. Were the Palestinians better off October 6th of 2023 or now? They were better off in 2023, October 6th. Their land, their buildings, their infrastructure, their community is destroyed. It's leveled. Now, is there a clear winner? No. But is there a clear loser? I would say that the Israelis have more points on the board at this moment in time.
So that's a loss. With regard to Hezbollah, Hezbollah has not disappeared. There's no question that they decapitated the leadership there, but the leaders were replaced, and they did some damage to Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is still there, well armed.
Some damage? He's speaking again. Like, it's like Israel lost in Gaza and some damage to Hezbollah. Israel literally destroyed the infrastructure of its command and control of Hamas and Hezbollah and made Iran worry because their proxy militia or militias have been degraded greatly. But you don't have Mearsheimer willing to say that. He's always trying to demonize and say that Israel isn't, Israel hasn't created some gains on the battlefield, some wins on the battlefield. I mean, come on. I mean, you got to admit, the pager incident and the pager bombings and all that, that was pretty, that was like James Bond type stuff. But they're losing, according to Mearsheimer. Really? I wouldn't say that they won, but I wouldn't say that they're losing because the game ain't over yet. But if you look at the scoreboard, I'm pretty sure that the Israelis have like 41 and the Palestinians have 13.
Furthermore, the purpose of going after Hezbollah was so that those hundreds of thousands of Israelis who had abandoned the north and moved to the center of Israel could go back home. Well, even though you have a ceasefire against, with regard to Hezbollah, those people are not moving north. They're afraid to move north. With regard to Iran, as you well know, Iran is on the threshold of acquiring nuclear weapons. It's closer than ever. And the idea that the Israelis can go in there and whack Iran and wreck Iran, I don't think that's the case at all. I think the one place where the Israelis have been successful is in Syria. And I think that Syria was an important conduit for sending Iranian arms to Hezbollah. And that conduit, for the time being anyway, has been shut off. But even there, I bet a lot of money that Hezbollah will eventually be fully rearmed. Then you have to deal with the fact that Israel has been accused of genocide, that the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants against both Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. This is a huge moral stain on Israel's reputation that will not go away. And indeed, in my opinion, will get only worse with the passage of time once people have a chance to reflect and write books and write articles and produce documentaries on what's happened in Gaza. So if you look around at the situation that Israel is in today, and in particular the situation that Netanyahu is in today, he is in deep trouble, as is that country.
This is why it's so great to have you on the show, John. Make sure we get all the frames right. But Prime Minister Netanyahu is coming to Washington soon, and we'll be meeting President Trump. What do you think Trump should tell him?
Pretty soon, we're going to go to this breaking news with Canada and Mexico with their tariffs against the United States.
Trump ought to tell them the basic facts of life, which is that Israel is in trouble and that Israel needs to get out of this problem with the Palestinians that's been facing for decades.
The problem with Professor Mearsheimer, and some of it I agree with, and he's using logic and he's using political science and international affairs and, power vacuums and, the typical way to analyze a problem. And he's been successful at it. All right. He's missing one important ingredient. And that is maybe the Bible's right. maybe what the Bible has been saying for thousands of years is coming true. Just maybe. Now, would you put your eggs in the Mearsheimer basket or in the biblical basket?
Way to do that is to reach some sort of political accommodation with the Palestinians. I mean, the one really positive aspect of Donald Trump, which separates him from most American foreign policymakers, especially people like Joe Biden, is that Trump is not a warmonger. Trump is not interested in fighting wars. Trump is much more interested in diplomacy and political settlements, not war. And the Israelis, on the other hand, don't really believe in diplomacy or trying to work out a political settlement with the Palestinians. They believe in big stick diplomacy, what they call the Iron Wall. What they think they can do is beat the living daylights out of the Palestinians and get them to submit. This hasn't worked, and it's not going to work in the future. And what Trump should tell Netanyahu, and this is what I mean when I'm talking about the basic facts of life, that there are real limits to what you can do with military power. And in situations like the one that you face with regard to the Palestinians, the only solution is a political solution, not a military solution.
One of the achievements of the last Trump
It's not a
administration
political solution. It's not a military solution. It's a biblical solution. And we've been warned for thousands of years that there needs to be peace in the region through a religious solution. It's not political. It's not military. It's religious solution. Peace can happen through a meeting of the minds of all the parties involved in that region. Now, we can do it bloody, or we can do it through peace. But peace, not through a political solution, but peace through a religious solution. But it's our choice. Do we want it bloody, or do we want it peaceful? But the option of political and military solution, that's a no-win game.
Trump talks a lot about are the Abraham Accords and talking about Saudi Arabia. And you can just sort of feel palpably both Trump's fascination with Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia wanting to actually do a deal with Israel, but Palestine being the nut that's just in the way of that. And I'm interested as, you just drew a map, a really, graphic map of what's going on in the region, that I think you think Iran is less out of it than a lot of other analysts are saying. How do you see that map changing as Saudi Arabia and Iran continue to compete in the region for security and essentially stature?
Hardly at all. I think the Abraham Accords don't matter for what happens in Gaza. I don't think the Abraham Accords matter for what happens in Lebanon, for what happens in Syria, or for what happens with regard to Iran. How does a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that's basically sanctioned or backed up by the United States influence any of those?
For the ones that are watching and the ones that will be watching the replay, Miss Taiwan just texted me and she was saying that a Chinese analyst says Black Hawks can be controlled remotely with the Matrix system. Does anyone know about the Matrix system, that where you can remotely control helicopters? I don't know if that's true or not.
It just doesn't matter very much.
But isn't it useful to have basic assumptions, key first principles about security, national security, alliances tested to see what we really care about? In that sense, is Trump providing a service?
Yeah, I do think that Trump provides an important service in that regard. Just to build on your description of the foreign policy establishment, I think the foreign policy establishment does not tolerate dissent. We have a particular worldview locked into the foreign policy establishment that spans both political parties. As I like to say, the Republicans and the Democrats are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And if you look at almost all of Trump's advisors, it's hard to distinguish their views from the views of Joe Biden and his advisors. Trump is a real anomaly here. And as we all know, this is why he had so much trouble getting his way the first time he was in the White House between 2017 and 2021. And the fact is, he didn't really know that much about what he was doing. He was new to the job, and he didn't have a lot of allies. Everybody who he hired was basically part of the foreign policy establishment. So we've gotten to the point where people like me, people like Jeff Sachs, right, we're basically X'd out of the mainstream discourse in the foreign policy establishment. People just don't want to hear what we have to say. So along comes someone like Donald Trump, and you could agree or disagree with his views.
Jeffrey Sachs is a finance guy, an economist that blew up through shock therapy Russia during its financial reconstruction after the Berlin Wall fell.
But he is a breath of fresh air. He is challenging a lot of the main tenets of the foreign policy view that has dominated in this country for so long. If I can just add one other point to this, I think during the Cold War, we had a much more open debate about the Soviet Union and U.S.-Soviet relations than we have today about Russia and U.S.-Russia relations. It's really quite remarkable how in a liberal society like the United States, we've closed off the option of open debate about foreign policy in the mainstream foreign.
I agree with him on that part. He's right about that.
The establishment, the mainstream media, and so forth and so on. So I think in that sense, Trump is a breath of fresh air.
Well, I want to be clear. I always want to hear your views. University of Chicago professor John Mearsheimer, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
All right.
Always.
So I'm just going to plug a couple products here before Live Now goes to Canada's retaliation for the tariffs. Tariffs were implemented today against Mexico, Canada, and I think China, maybe some other countries, but I think those are the three. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. And get the vitamin C with magnesium. This helps to boost up your immune system, and it will also help with your skin health. Take it with filtered water. Take it every day. If you're not feeling too great, during the cold season or whatever, take a double dose. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Taking a good probiotic is really important for your gut health. Gut health is super important for your liver, super important for your brain, super important for your other bodily systems, including your skin. By taking a very high quality probiotic like I have, in my hand here is a powdered version. I also have a veggie cap version that you can take. Both are very high quality. I prefer the powder because I mix it with soft foods, but you can mix it in a smoothie or filtered water, however you want to take it, or just take the veggie cap if that's the way you prefer to take it. But taking a probiotic, a very high quality probiotic, will help to bring down inflammation in your gut. It will help to improve your energy absorption, improve your immune system because your mucosal layer within your gut lining will be improved. When you're improving the health of your gut, you're reducing leaky gut syndrome, and you're reducing the chances of having mutations at the cellular level within the crypt within your gut, especially in the colon. All right. So you want to, keep your gut healthy by taking a good probiotic. In addition, your metabolism will get better, and the communication between your gut and your liver will improve. Your liver is a major organ for detoxification of your body. It does a lot of things. It helps to create energy. It helps to create, to form cholesterol, and liver is really important. All right. So good health for your liver is tied to good health with your gut. In addition, having a good gut biome means that you're going to be able to sleep better. It also means that you'll be able to focus better. You'll have more mental clarity and acuity. And you can reduce depression by having a good gut biome. A lot of people don't realize that chronic problems with your gut could make you irritable and depressed. And, so it behooves you to improve your gut biome. In addition, a good gut biome will improve your hair, your skin, your nails. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the powdered version or the veggie cap version. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. And lastly, I have added NAC to my stack. NAC helps to boost up glutathione levels. Glutathione is an antioxidant that will help to soak up free radicals. It is synergistic with C60. And NAC will also help to detoxify your liver and your kidney, especially if you take acetaminophen. And NAC will help to calm down your nervous system. A lot of people they activate their sympathetic nervous system too much because they're stressed out or whatever. You want to calm that down and go into parasympathetic mode. Sympathetic is fight and flight. So you're going to increase your cortisol levels and you're going to be stressed out and your glucose levels will go up and you're creating free radicals and you're stressed, right? And if you're stressed chronically, your immune system will go down. But if you go into parasympathetic, your cortisol levels go down, your immune system gets better, you have better control of your glucose levels, and your heart rate goes down. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the NAC. It boosts up glutathione levels, which is a very strong antioxidant. It helps with calming your central nervous system, and it helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. Okay, let's go to Canada here. The table.
And Trump may not be finished. He plans to impose tariffs on the European Union. Trump replied, quote, absolutely. Traveling with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
All right, so they
had a live look at the White House on this Saturday evening. It's about 9 p.m. the nation's capital. While we're waiting for Prime Minister Trudeau to step up there in Canada, we will bring you his remarks in full as soon as we see him step up, by the way. We expect him to respond to these tariffs.
You should be speaking like in a minute.
We do prioritize live coverage here at Live Now. We have one live event that's taking place in Maryland.
Okay, so while we're waiting for Trudeau to speak about the tariff retaliation, which is going to be big and it's going to move markets. And what's happening right now is going to move markets on Monday for sure. All right, while we're waiting for him to speak, let's go to Fox News. Stephen Miller is talking about media hoax.
Snowden a traitor to the United States of America.
As someone who has worn our uniform in combat,
this,
I understand how critical our national security
apparently
is.
you don't.
You're asking me not to serve vaccine.
Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
He is asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters.
And you know what's amazing? What's amazing is that I was talking about civility early in this broadcast, about the importance of civility, and in social media, the civility has really gone downhill. And we're seeing this not just in social media or in your personal conversations on the street or wherever or at work. We're seeing it in the Senate. I mean, we have lost the ability to just have conversations. It's amazing.
On me are to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations. The only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI.
RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard facing potential GOP opposition. Here's Vice President Vance's message to Senate Republicans.
The president has made his selections, and the advice and consent power of the United States Senate should not be used to block people because you have one policy disagreement on one issue. You don't get to make these decisions. President Trump gets to make these decisions, and he already has.
All right, let's bring in Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor. Stephen, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. I want to start with Tulsi. Some Republican senators pressed Tulsi Gabbard in her hearing this week to declare Edward Snowden a traitor. One of those members, James Langford, said that it wasn't a trick question and he was surprised by her answer. Should she have just said yes? Would the White House have approved of that answer?
It's very simple. The policy that Tulsi is going to implement as the head of national intelligence is the president's policy. It is the policy that Republican senators support. It is the policy the American people support. It is the policy of fiercely protecting our nation's classified intelligence while ensuring maximum transparency, and the policy of fully enforcing all federal laws, including the federal laws that govern the illicit disclosure of classified information. Look, President Trump was the victim for 8 years of the intelligence community weaponizing classified leaks, fabricating classified intelligence to go after President Trump. So what Tulsi's mission is to restore trust, faith, and integrity in the U.S. intelligence system. And so when Republican senators vote to confirm Tulsi, they're voting to ratify the reform agenda that Donald Trump campaigned on and that Donald Trump built a historic winning coalition on.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune didn't sound very confident necessarily about her confirmation. Is the White House considering any backup options right now?
She is going to get confirmed. This is a very important point. President Trump built the broadest, most diverse winning coalition in the history of the Republican Party. He brought together old school liberals. He brought together.
I think RFK Jr. will be confirmed. I think Cash will get confirmed. I'm not sure about Tulsi. It's really close, really close. I hope that she does get confirmed, but it's slim margins there.
Conservative Democrats. He brought together new right Republicans, traditional Republicans. He stitched together a coalition of the young, of minority voters, and of blue-collar workers all across this country. His cabinet reflects that coalition. Americans did not vote for Mitt Romney or a Mitt Romney cabinet. They voted for President Trump and a President Trump cabinet. And Republican senators who won their majority because of President Trump. They have their gavels because of President Trump. They have a majority leader because of President Trump. Should, and I believe will, ratify his cabinet so that we can continue to grow and expand the Republican Party as a permanent majority governing coalition.
Okay. I want to switch gears and ask you about some other candidates. Some Democrats are sounding the alarm on Rust vote, especially after the OMB memo this week. The Atlantic said that the White House may not have seen that memo before it went out. Have you seen that memo prior to its release? Did you approve of that?
No, I hadn't seen the memo, but I think the more important point here is that the memo was hoax. The memo was a guidance memo. The memo did not do anything. The memo provided interpretive guidance on how to apply the president's executive orders. The memo did not change any federal policy. A hoax was created by the media about that memo. The memo being in effect or not being in effect has zero impact on public policy because it was just an interpretive guidance memo. And the media spun this entire thing completely out of proportion. It was, like I said, it was a straightforward, routine media hoax. Like, it's not normal for the White House to review guidance documents, and the White House had an OMB, because guidance documents don't have the force of law, because guidance documents don't set or change federal policy.
Right.
They're just interpretive guidance for agencies. And so the real culprit here is the media for lying about the memo that, again, did not change or set any federal policy.
Can you clear up whether, in fact, this freeze is still in effect? Because I obviously saw the press secretary say memo rescinded, but the orders are still in place. The freeze is still in effect. That's evidently not how DOJ is seeing it. They believe that the brakes have been pumped on this whole thing because of the administrative stay in D.C. and now potentially a temporary restraining order coming out of Rhode Island and the other case with the 22 state attorneys general. So is money for these programs impacted by the president's EOs currently going out the door while the court case plays out.
The president issued executive orders.
Goldbelly is shipping the world's greatest food. So if you want Ina Garten's famous coconut cake, stone crabs from Miami's most iconic.
The president issued executive orders pausing funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion, critical race theory, radical transgender ideology, sex
I
changes.
understand. I'm just,
No,
because the
I'm
judge
answering.
said, the
Either-
judge said
either-
that there was
Either
going to
I
be
can,
stopped.
either,
Go ahead.
either I can answer the question or I can't.
I'm
The
trying to get
president
clarity, Dylan,
paused
because
the-
the judge said Friday.
I'm
so-
going to answer your question exactly.
Okay.
The president paused funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion, radical gender ideology, critical race theory, sex changes for minors, foreign aid, as well as certain Green New Deal projects. Also, the resettlement of illegal aliens and the funding to NGOs that resettle illegal aliens. Those are all discretionary, agency-directed spending projects that are not required by law, that are not required by Congress. In addition, every federal agency in its own right has not only the authority, but the mandate and the requirement from Congress to review grants, to review contracts, to review new conditions for federal spending, and to ensure there is no waste, to ensure there is no abuse, to ensure that the bureaucracy is not acting unaccountably. This entire case that we're talking about is a hoax piled on top of a hoax, piled on top of a hoax. The case is debating nothing, it concerns nothing, it makes no sense, and people have been spending way too much time talking about it. Federal agencies have an affirmative mandate from Congress to review new spending that goes out the door. In other words, contracts are issued, they are drawn up. An entity asks for federal dollars. They say, I want money to build X, I want money to do Y, I want money to teach Z.
Right,
Then
I
that
understand.
agency has to review that, and they have to decide whether that is a meritorious use of taxpayer dollars. For the
I
government
understand.
not to perform that
Steven,
function,
we're
would mean
almost
that
out of
all
time.
money
We're-
was issued automatically without any conditions whatsoever. I'm not aware of any citizen who thinks that would be a just or virtuous outcome.
I fully understand your position, Stephen. I was asking just a different question of while this administrative stay is in place because a DC judge put it there, is any money going out the door while we approach that deadline, which I think is Monday?
Again,
So
the money is going out the door for all of the things that are required by law, for all of the things
got it.
that affect benefits to individual Americans.
Okay.
Money
So
is
the-
not
so the
going out
freeze
the
is still
door
in effect
for
for the
critical
other
race
stuff.
theory.
Got
Money
it.
is not coming
Okay.
out the door to trans our children. Money is not going out the door to help organizations traffic children and resettle illegal aliens. And
Understood.
every department and every agency is using its discretion under law to ensure that contracts comply with the will and desires of taxpayers. To not do that would mean that individual bureaucrats would be able to funnel billions of dollars out the door to their friends and to their allies with zero accountability.
We got
A
a commercial
memo
break
that did
coming up.
nothing was enjoined, so therefore nothing changed because the memo didn't do anything in the first place.
I really don't want to cut off this interview with and go to a hard break, but Stephen, thank you very much for explaining all that. Appreciate your
So Miss Taiwan text and she was explaining the matrix system. Now I think she's wrong on this. I don't think the plane crash in DC is matrix system, but she's saying that the matrix system is installed on planes so to control it remotely. They did it in Korea. My guess is if the planes were hacked, especially so close to airports, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just an accident that unfortunately happened and we have to, live through the consequences. But like I said in the previous video, random events has information in it that may give us a glimpse to a future event. And I feel, and many other people feel the same way, that a 9/11-like event is highly probable in 2025 or 2026. All right, while we go to another, before we go, oh, wait a minute. Al Jazeera is starting to talk about the Trump tariffs, so let's go to that here.
Well, Donald Trump says that tariffs are a response to what he calls a national emergency on undocumented migrants and illegal drugs crossing both of America's borders. He says he will keep the tariffs in place until Canada does more to combat the problem. Kristen Swiggy has more now from Detroit.
Donald Trump cited a growing public health crisis in the United States due to illegal drugs coming over the border from the south and the north, and in doing so imposed these 25% tariffs on the United States' two largest trading partners, Mexico and Canada, over the bridge behind me here. And he really took Canada to task for not doing enough to stop this illicit drug flow. He acknowledged that more illegal drugs flow over the southern border than do over the northern border, but he says that the amount is on the rise and that the Canadians have not done enough to work with U.S. law enforcement to stop the problem. He cited Canadian research to point to a growing trade in Canada, and also claimed that Mexican cartels were now operating fentanyl labs out of Canada as well. And he's
Canadian energy, a decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th. Cette décision met en péril une relation économique historique. Une relation qui a été la source de...
We had to do it in France.
De prospérité et de
Mr. Justin Trudeau is responding to the tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump.
Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people.
No.
As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery store and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you. During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always
I just have to
there.
pause for a quick moment. I've been saying this since the election, all right? I get the sense that 2025 and 2026 increased potentiality of a 9/11-like event. And 9/11's popping up all over the place in people's rhetoric. So and it just happened right now.
Ending with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we built the most successful economic, military and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
No,
Canada has.
No, I thought he was saying that we're going to hurt. No, it's going to be Canada. The Canadians are going to hurt more than the United States. And oh, by the way, you know what? Maybe Americans should be taking some of that maple syrup.
Minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need. Canada has the ingredients necessary to build a booming and secure partnership for the North American economy, and we stand at the ready to work together. Let's take a moment to talk about our shared border. Our border is already safe and secure, but there's always more work to do. Less than 1% of fentanyl, less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States come from Canada. But hearing concerns from both Canadians and Americans, including the American president himself, we're taking action. We launched a $1.3 billion border plan that is already showing results. Because we too are devastated by the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has torn apart communities and caused so much pain and torment for countless families across Canada, just like in the United States. A drug that we too want to see wiped from the face of this earth. A drug whose traffickers must be punished. As neighbors, we must work collaboratively to fix this. Unfortunately, the actions taken today by the White House split us apart instead of bringing us together. Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the US trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Ce soir, j'annonce la réplique du Canada. Des tarifs douaniers de 25% sur 155 milliards de dollars de marchandises américaines. Dès mardi, 30 milliards de dollars de produits américains vont être touchés par ces tarifs. Et dans 21 jours...
The fact is this, when America catches a cold, Canada catches pneumonia. This economic tit for tat between Trudeau and Trump's going to win. Watch.
Compagnie canadienne de trouver des options alternatives, ce sera le cas pour 125 milliards de dollars de marchandises de plus. Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with...
Let me get this straight. I think Americans would stop drinking Molson and they'll start drinking Sam Adams. I'm pretty sure about that.
And shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships. we will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbors in the world.
The two people in the background, I don't remember her name, but she's an idiot. But the two in the background, they look like they're going to shit a brick. Because guess what? America first.
That said, I also want to speak directly to Canadians in this moment. I'm sure many of you are anxious, but I want you to know we are all in this together. The Canadian government, Canadian businesses, Canadian organized labor, Canadian civil society, Canada's premiers, and tens of millions of Canadians from coast to coast to coast are aligned and united. This is Team Canada at its best. Plus tôt aujourd'hui, j'ai parlé avec les premiers ministres de toutes nos provinces et territoires. On est unis et solidaires. Ils ont tous appuyé notre approche. On est aussi alignés pour faire tomber les obstacles qui freinent le commerce entre nos provinces et territoires et rendre ça plus facile pour les consommateurs de choisir des produits de chez nous. Il y a quelques minutes, je me suis entretenu avec Mme Sheinbaum, la présidente du Mexique, notre autre partenaire nord-américain, qui a lui aussi été la cible de tarifs douaniers aujourd'hui. On s'est engagé à travailler ensemble pour y faire face. Il s'agit d'une menace qui vise l'ensemble du pays. Et ça m'a fait chaud au cœur de voir autant de nos leaders répondre à l'appel et s'engager pour qu'aucun Canadien ne soit laissé pour compte. Notre gouvernement va être là pour les Canadiens.
You know, as he's speaking French, the reality of the situation is Trump's going to get on his bat phone, and he's going to go, do you take American Express? We're going to buy Canada. Click.
D'être là les uns pour les autres. D'être là pour vos amis, vos voisins et vos compatriotes. D'un océan à l'autre, les Canadiens sont très différents. On parle de différentes langues, on a de différentes croyances, on a de différentes opinions, de différentes idées. Et quand on reste unis, on puise notre force dans cette différence. And now is also the time to choose Canada. There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon, or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to here in Canada.
You don't mess with Florida or Texas.
Many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer. C'est le temps de choisir des produits d'ici et d'appuyer des entreprises d'ici. D'appuyer nos producteurs agricoles, nos manufacturiers, nos travailleurs, nos entrepreneurs, nos artistes. It might mean doing all of these things or finding your own way to stand up for Canada. In this moment, we must pull together because we love this country.
Just listen really carefully. I think the Canadians are saying, USA, 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 USA.
Braving the cold during the long winter months. We don't like to beat our chests, but we're always out there, waving the maple leaf loudly and proudly to celebrate an Olympic gold medal. On a notre propre identité, notre propre histoire et nos propres valeurs. Les Canadiens sont accueillants, ouverts, novateurs, ambitieux. On préfère régler nos disputes avec diplomatie, mais on est prêt à se battre quand c'est nécessaire. Canada is home to bountiful resources, breathtaking beauty, the proud people who've come from every corner of the globe to forge a nation with a unique identity worth embracing and celebrating. We don't pretend to be perfect, but Canada is the best country on earth. There's nowhere else that I and our 41 million strong family would rather be, and we will get through this challenge just as we've done.
Let me get this straight. 41 million versus over, or around 330 million. Now, whose economy is a little bit bigger? Like I said, Trudeau, do you take American Express?
Times before, together. Thank you. Merci. Vive le Canada.
All right, so we'll take 20 minutes of questions, 20 minutes de questions. One question, one follow-up, une question à suivre. Merci.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le Premier ministre Raymond Fillon de TVA. Est-ce que vous avez parlé ou tenté de parler avec le président Trump aujourd'hui ou dans les derniers jours?
Ça fait depuis l'inauguration que j'essaie de rejoindre le président.
Okay, so give you a little wrap up of what we heard there. Canada is responding with 25% tariffs against $155 billion of American goods. 30 billion of those dollars will start on Tuesday. The other $125 billion will start in 21 days. We're going to do that 21-day buffer in order to allow supply chains to adjust and find alternatives. Trudeau saying that there will be consequences for the tariffs that are being implemented. He says that this will impact the American auto manufacturing plants, food, gas at the pump, impede Americans' access to goods like nickel, steel, and aluminum. He says it doesn't have to be this way.
It'd be lovely if he spoke English.
He brought up the fact that Canada helped America through 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, or recently during those.
Right. While we're waiting for him to start speaking in English, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin D3. This is a great supplement you should be taking every day. Really important. It helps with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. It helps get rid of cells to go into it helps cells to go into apoptosis if they need to, especially if they're infected. And D3 helps to absorb calcium. D3 in higher doses, if you do a little bit of resistance training on an injured joint, you can actually reduce osteoarthritis. So I have a whole protocol on that. I can go in more detail in another video about that. And D3 couples really well with vitamin K2. You should take these together. And this will help you to add more density to your bone over time with resistance training, taking calcium. I take calcium through drinking milk. Some people take it through a calcium supplement, but taking D3, K2 will allow you to absorb that calcium. And with resistance training, you're building a more dense matrix for your bone, really important. You're improving your joints also. And with a certain protocol at higher doses, and light resistance training on injured joints and on joints that have osteoarthritis, you can reverse osteoarthritis. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3 and the K2. And another great product, not only does D3 and vitamin K2 help with your bones and your joints, but it'll also help with your cardiovascular system. And it couples well with nattokinase. Nattokinase will help to bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, and break up clots because it's fibrinolytic. The D3 and the K2 work together cardiovascularly in pulling and preventing calcium from building up into the plaque structure. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the D3, the K2, and the nattokinase. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And by the way, Make no mistake about it. America is going to win this trade war.
To Trump's tariffs, and let's just start from the beginning here. What happened today, February 1st, we anticipated that this would happen. Trump, back when he took office, just under 2 weeks time ago, Trump gave a February 1st deadline to Canada and Mexico to reach some sort of agreement, or else these tariffs would be implemented. That includes 25% imports, 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, and energy imports from Canada, including oil, natural gas, and electricity, would be taxed at a 10% rate. So February 1st has come, and those tariffs have come. Trump implementing these tariffs in the name of border security because of things like immigration and fentanyl that have been coming through the northern and southern borders. I'll reiterate that Prime Minister Trudeau said that less than 1% of fentanyl and less than 1% of illegal crossings come from the northern border.
Different ways we can encourage the Americans to step back from these trade actions.
Bonjour, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Pour être clair sur cette question-là, les tarifs sur le gaz naturel et le pétrole ne sont que de 10%, alors que pour le reste, c'est plus de 25%, notamment parce que les États-Unis ont besoin de notre pétrole. Ils ont besoin de plein d'autres choses dans notre secteur énergétique. À quel endroit est-ce que vous êtes prêt à couper le robinet?
All right, so let's step away. We'll be awaiting and we'll be watching the president's Truth Social feed. I'll be curious to see if he has an immediate response to what Prime Minister Trudeau just said and what we've been hearing from Mexico as well. Retaliatory tariffs coming from both countries. Responding on X, let's get the Mexican response to this. Responding on X, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said that she had instructed her economy secretary to implement a response that includes retaliatory tariffs and other measures in defense of Mexico's interests. Saying on X, quote, "We categorically reject the White House's slander that the Mexican government has alliances with criminal organizations, as well as any intention of meddling in our territory. If the United States government and its agencies wanted to address the serious fentanyl consumption in their country, they could fight the sale of drugs on the streets of their major cities, which they don't do, and the laundering of money that this illegal activity generates that has done so much harm to its population." It's the Mexican president on X earlier today. Prime Minister Trudeau saying that Canada did not want this. He said earlier today, Canada does not want this, but they are prepared.
C'est le choix des Américains de nous mettre dans cette situation-là, mais puisqu'on est ici.
So we'll keep an eye on this press conference. Our coverage is going to continue in a moment here. We'll be right back.
All right, so what I want to do here is maybe Bloomberg might have something on this right now. No.
League stadiums. The main stadium, named for their dad, is equipped with seating for 2,500.
All right, let's see here. News. Okay, this was done to this. Let's see. This is about the Panama. No, that's long. That's too long. I don't want to do that one. All right, this is talking about how companies are dodging the Trump tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Surprise fees? Not here. While some other tax preparers leave you guessing, H&R Block gives you a price before you begin. If we don't,
in this 1.1 million square foot warehouse in Fort Worth, Texas, millions of dollars worth of goods are stockpiled ahead of potentially sweeping tariffs expected to be levied against China, Mexico, and Canada.
This is a import-heavy economy. Most of what we consume comes in from Southeast Asia and China. A lot of those goods might be coming in and have a tariff slapped on them.
Front loading is a tool companies use to buy and store their goods in advance, in this case to avoid pricey tariffs. Big brands like Walmart and Columbia Sportswear are executing this strategy. Walmart's imports from China rose 33% from 2023 to 2024. Columbia Sportswear imports went up 50% during the same time and jumped over 80% during the March to December period. At the same time, container imports from China to the United States have surged.
I think 2024 have really seen a lot of front loading happening. At first, shippers needed to react to the Red Sea disruption, and now it's Trump tariffs coming into force.
But for some companies, front loading is not an option. Just from the execution standpoint, I'm just curious on how it will happen, how folks are going to navigate.
The point you're making is any business manager's worst nightmare, which is planning for the unknown. The uncertainty of this situation keeps me up at night. I'm often asked, what are you doing? How are you planning for it? And my answer is, I don't know.
President Trump said he expects to put a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada beginning on February 1st, and discussed a 10% tariff on China. A tariff is a government-imposed tax on imported goods and services. And if tariffs are enacted, it's not only companies who will see higher prices, consumers will as well.
Prices will definitely go up on everyday items. So from the cars we buy and the gas we put in them to the iPhones, laptops, and tablets that we're so dependent on.
The tools to do it as a government right now, we will keep doing it alongside.
It seems like he's taking questions now in English.
A member of the Canada-U.S. Council, Lana Payne, today said that an ally would not act this way, and therefore the U.S. is no longer Canada's ally. Do you agree with that?
Like I said, I think there are going to be people who are upset and even hurt by what's gone on here. But I have faith. I have faith in Canadians, but I also have faith in the friendship between Canada and the United States. It has gone through challenging.
I have faith that the two people that are behind him are going to shit a brick, because when Trump goes total tariff ape shit, Canada's economy is going to tank. Watch.
This before, but we always make it through because we've been able to count on each other for over 150 years, and we will continue to be able to do that long into the future. This is a friendship that has stood the test of time, and despite challenges that we can work on and we will work on together, we will continue to be friends and neighbors.
Prime Minister, you said earlier that you're not going to move forward on measures that would further divide the country. Does this mean that blocking energy exports is fully off the table?
It means that any conversations around further measures, particularly involving one industry or one region of the country more than another, is something that we're going to do carefully and thoughtfully and with the full partnership of regional.
No, Big Oil is going to get on the phone right after Trump said, will you take American Express because we're going to buy your country. Big Oil is going to get on the phone and say, if you want to live another day, you're going to make sure that the oil flows.
As provincial premiers, businesses, no one part of the country should be carrying a heavier burden than any other. We're in this together. We're all going to stand together, and we'll be there for each other from coast to coast to coast.
And President Trump said in the executive order that it's about the border and fentanyl. Do you think that this is what it's about?
We have one of the strongest, more secure borders in the world between Canada and the United States. As I said, less than 1% of fentanyl going into the United States come from Canada, less than 1% of illegal migrants going into.
The tool and die industry in Detroit back in the late 90s, early 2000s was decimated because of NAFTA moving the tool and die industry out of the Detroit area into Windsor, Canada. Why? Because it was playing with the whole Canadian currency game. No, bring the fucking jobs back to America, dude.
United States come from Canada. That doesn't mean there isn't more to do. And that's why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our borders. And we're seeing over the past number of weeks, past couple of months, the numbers significantly decrease at the border already. We are making progress in working together, including sending joint teams over to China to talk about the precursor chemicals that get developed into fentanyl all across North America. There are things that we can and must do together, and I understand the preoccupation the American president has with fentanyl deaths. We share those preoccupations. We've seen far too many communities across our country devastated by toxic drug supplies, by fentanyl, by opioid addictions. We have taken action over the years, but we're happy to do even more with the United States to counteract this horrific tragedy. That's why we have committed to doing even more and working alongside. But this trade action against Canada is not the best way we can actually work together to save lives.
Good evening, Prime Minister. Stephanie Taylor with the National Post. What does it tell you about your relationship with President Trump that you've been trying to get a hold of him and he hasn't been speaking with you?
I think this is a time where we've all remarked on just how active President Trump has been in engaging with a wide range of topics in his first weeks in office. As you all know, I've had many good and substantive conversations with President Trump over the past months, where we've highlighted the work that we can do. Our ministers and officials have been engaging, in many cases like today, multiple times a day with their counterparts to talk through these issues, to move forward on areas of mutual concern. We will continue to engage, and I will continue to be there to work with President Trump as we've worked together in the past. We've worked together to solve some pretty challenging issues over the years. I look forward to doing that again. Je pense qu'on peut souligner à quel point le président est extrêmement actif avec beaucoup de différents enjeux sur sa table. Ça fait plusieurs mois que j'ai eu beaucoup de conversations avec lui sur les enjeux dont on est en train de discuter aujourd'hui. Il sait très bien mes positions et en même temps, les ministres sont extrêmement actifs à être engagés avec leur contrepartie américaine, compris plusieurs fois chacun aujourd'hui, pour souligner le travail que nous pouvons faire. Alors, il faut se souvenir que moi et le président, nous avons réglé de grands enjeux dans le passé et je suis toujours prêt à le faire encore une fois.
But if you can't get a hold of President Trump on a day as consequential as this, when it really matters, can Canada have a productive relationship with President Trump and the Trump administration moving forward?
As I've said, we have had a very effective and constructive series of conversations throughout the American administration. We'll continue to. I look forward to speaking with President Trump in the coming days and weeks. This is something that matters, but we've solved big issues before and we will solve them again.
Last question, dernière question, s'il vous plaît.
Thanks for taking our questions. Raisa Patel, the Toronto Star. When did you first learn that President Trump intends to increase tariffs if Canada retaliates, and how has that changed your strategy?
I think Canadians understand that we need to respond to this. We need to respond in a way that is appropriate, that is measured but forceful, and that meets the moment. We're certainly not looking to escalate, but we will stand up for Canada, for Canadians, for Canadian jobs. We will also continue to do more together with the United States to counteract.
What does Carmen say in South Park all the time about Canada? Blame Canada.
scourge that is fentanyl. We will continue to work on growing our economies together, on creating jobs and competing with the rise of non-market economies around the world. We can and will do things together, and that is my focus. My job is to stand up for Canadians. That's exactly what we're doing. But we're also standing up for the relationship between Canada and the United States, which, as I said, is the most successful partnership and friendship the world has ever seen.
You're dealing with a U.S. administration that says, there's nothing that you can do to stop this. We're not looking for any concessions. So do you see any conceivable way out of this because of that?
The coming weeks will be difficult for Canadians, and they'll be difficult for Americans. The level of cooperation, the level of effective partnerships between our two countries that have been established over decades and generations means that this trade action by the Americans and our response is going to have real consequences for people, for workers on both sides of our border. We don't want to be here. We didn't ask for this. But we will not back down in standing up both for Canadians and for the incredible, successful relationship and partnership between Canada and the United States. I look forward to working with the American administration on a range of challenging issues that our communities and our world is facing. And I hope that day comes soon. Yes, beaucoup.
All right, this concludes today's press conference. Ça conclut la conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Merci. Merci tout le monde.
Speaking partly in English and partly in French, Justin Trudeau.
I'll tell you, Trump's gonna win this tariff war with Canada. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric and the ashwagandha. These work really well together. All right, I take this every day. The turmeric is something that will bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines. Also, it will soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. Ashwagandha will bring down cortisol levels and help control your glucose levels. A lot of people have chronic inflammation, so they have elevated cortisol levels. So to control that, you want to take ashwagandha root. Now, when you take these two together, you're improving your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Why? By bringing down the inflammation, by soaking up those free radicals, by controlling cortisol, by controlling blood glucose levels, you're reducing that inflammatory response. Your immune system isn't suppressed by high cortisol levels, and you're reducing that inflammation in the vascular system. And it's the inflammation signal that kickstarts the production of plaque. So you're reducing that signal, and you're soaking up free radicals through the turmeric. Now, this is synergistic with C60, and it's part of a 4-pillar core health protocol. The first is to soak up free radicals. The next pillar is to neutralize pathogens. Another pillar, which is this one, is to lower inflammation. You lower the inflammation by taking the turmerics, the ashwagandhas, and lignans. It's a powder. You take them all together and you really supercharge bringing down the inflammatory response. And the fourth pillar is boosting up energy levels in your metabolism. All right? Take turmeric and ashwagandha together, and they work really well with boosting up your immune system and bringing down inflammation and helping with your cardiovascular system. And stack this with lignans if you'd like to really supercharge it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, I take Max 35 and Max 14, all right? 35 is a 35 parts per million solution, and Max 14 is 14 parts per million, all right? Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 30 seconds or so, and then swallow. It's a great way to maintain the mucosal barrier, to improve your innate immune system, and to improve the oral cavity health, and to neutralize pathogens. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Max 14 or the Max 35. Again, the Max 14 is 14 parts per million. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. I take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. If you're not feeling so great because of the cold season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. All right. Now, I was talking about these 4 pillars of health. All right. Neutralize pathogens with the Max 35s, Max 14s. Soak up free radicals, right, with C60. Bring down inflammation with the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans. But that 4th pillar that I've added to the core of this protocol is to boost up your metabolism and your energy levels. And you can do that with Boomer Boost. Now, Boomer Boost is a powder, as a big scooper. Take a scoop a day. You can mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt, or you can mix it with milk. Some people just mix it with filtered water or do a mixture, a smoothie. Take it once a day. It's a soup. It's like a superfood, okay? You get lots of nutrients. All right, I don't have time to read off all the nutrients that this thing has. Go to my store and look at the label. But this has a boatload of nutrients that you really need. Now, what this will do is it'll improve your energy levels and your metabolism. And when you have more energy, you have more ATP, which is really important for your cells, for your tissues, and for your immune system. And if you notice, if you graph out, when you get older, right, your ATP levels start to drop off once you get into your about 40s, 50s. And as you get into your geriatric years, your ATP levels really drop off. When you're younger, in your pediatric years and into your teens and in your 20s and 30s, you have a decent number of ATP. But eventually, once you start getting into your 30s or 40s, it starts to peter out. All right. So it's really important, no matter what age you are, to really boost up those energy levels. Because when you start having energy decline, then that's when the cell tissues don't perform as well. So Boomer Boost will boost up those energy levels, help with your cardiovascular health. Your brain health will improve. Your skeletal muscle and the ability to build up muscle and strength will improve. So it's hitting multiple organ systems, right? Multiple systems of your body. But it's really important to take every day. All right. Now, you really supercharge this if you follow the 4 pillars. Taking this to boost up your energy levels, taking the C60 for the antioxidant, taking the Max 14 or Max 35 to neutralize pathogens, taking the turmeric, the ashwagandha, the lignans to really bring down inflammation. When you couple that all together, it's what I call the core. All right. And that core really supercharges your health. All right. But, some people don't want to take all that. That's okay. But you will get benefits by just taking this. All right. Now, I've created a box called the Longevity Boost Box. It's at a discount, and you get Boomer Boost with Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. The barley is a protein, and you would mix it with this each day, and you're getting your protein. But with Gladiator barley and heirloom barley, what you get is a protein source. It adds to the superfood, and you're going to get strength gains, soaking up other free radicals through superoxide dismutase. You're going to be able to detoxify. It's very high quality barley, and when you mix them together, it adds to that superfood. And you're going to notice that you're really controlling your A1C levels, especially with the Gladiator barley with the Boomer Boost. Really supercharges the control of the A1C. Now, when you do that every day, either for breakfast or lunch, with the soft food or the smoothie, right? You're going to start losing weight, and your energy levels are really going to go up. So this is a great way to lose weight, especially if you couple this with the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. Now, it's better to take the gladiator barley if you're looking for strength gains and you want to control your A1C levels. You do control your A1C levels more, with the Boomer Boost with the heirloom barley, but you'll get more of a benefit of A1C level control with the gladiator barley mixed with the Boomer Boost. Okay, so I built up this box called the Longevity Boost box, and you can pick either heirloom barley, gladiator barley, and you get the boost at a discount. All right, or you can buy them all separately. It's up to you. But I just told you how to lose weight and really supercharge your energy levels and control diabetes. All right, so please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, get the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. They work great together. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. With that, let's see what's going on. Let's go back to CNBC about how companies are dodging tariffs.
To the clothes we wear and the food we eat, like avocados, corn, tomatoes, all the prices are going to go up.
So how are companies preparing for potential tariffs, and what impact will they have on shippers and consumers? CNBC traveled to Fort Worth, Texas, a major hub for logistics companies located a few hundred miles from the Mexican border, to find out. Paul Brazier is the head of global supply chain for ITS Logistics, a leading U.S. shipper with annual revenues of about $1 billion. So tell us a little bit about this facility.
Well, we're in the heart of one of the most important distribution center areas in the United States. Dallas-Fort Worth services pretty much 75% of the United States. Within about 2 days, everything comes through here. So you've got electronics, you have infrastructure goods, you have food.
The warehouse is also filled with Chinese and Mexican goods and components. To avoid potentially expensive tariffs, many of ITS's clients have front-loaded their products.
Starting in November of 2024, shippers of all sizes started bringing in their product to avoid the Trump tariff.
Lenovo imports from China rose 22% from 2023 to 2024.
How many of these products that we're surrounded by with are sourced from China?
I'd say well over half. It comes in large quantities. It comes in ocean containers and trucks.
The biggest category of product here being front-loaded, components used in infrastructure projects.
So right now you're looking at 500,000 square feet of product that is used for domestic consumption. These are components that go into the things that are building our bridges, our roads, and electrical equipment here in the States. Especially on the infrastructure side, there's a ton of Chinese-made goods that are being shipped forward right now and have since November.
And what's the reason behind the front loading, particularly when it comes to the components for infrastructure?
Well, those budgets are made 2 or 3 years in advance. And if you have a 20% increase in the cost of goods, that blows most of those budgets out of the water.
Data from Import Genius backs that up. Imports of solar panels, AI server racks, backup power supplies, and lithium batteries that are used to power data centers surged in the second half of 2024. Consumer goods like sweatshirts and smokeless fire pits are also sitting on these warehouse shelves.
Walmart and Columbia Sportswear, they're front loading in a lot of product ahead of these tariffs to try to mitigate those increasing costs. Warehouse is not cheap.
The medium size and the small importers are the ones that are probably the most adversely affected by these kinds of decisions. the larger players in the market, they have a huge distribution center network. They have the infrastructure in place to be able to navigate these fairly easily.
In the US, the top products being pulled forward include sneakers, housewares, appliances, and auto parts.
And that spells big business for companies like
Okay, so basically the takeaway from this video, I'm not going to finish the video here. I'm going to shut down soon here. But the takeaway is there's front loading. So there's not going to be an immediate effect at the grocery store, at the stores. There will be a lag. But what you're going to see is an immediate knee-jerk reaction in the market on Monday. And it'd be interesting to see what the Asian market does with their trading. So we'll find out, but I suspect that the markets will move tomorrow. And there's probably going to be an equity sell-off. Probably bonds will rally and equity will sell off. We'll see what happens. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. This is an antioxidant. It'll help to boost up your mitochondria. In addition, it helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Those are cells that build up toxins and chemicals within them that stop dividing, and the body needs to get rid of them. So if you get rid of the senesced cells, the healthier the tissues will be. Resveratrol helps with this. Resveratrol stacks really well with C60. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. And voila, we're talking about C60 again. C60 you can get in avocado and MCT coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It's a very strong antioxidant. I take a teaspoon a day, and it's going to soak up those free radicals, boost up the health of your mitochondria. Your ATP is going to go up, and with more ATP, you're going to have more energy, and those cells are going to perform better. And the stress in the cells have gone down. The stress in the tissues have gone down. So your glands and your organ systems are going to perform better. Your neurons are going to perform better. Why? Because you need a lot of ATP and you need very healthy mitochondria for healthy neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. It's a very strong antioxidant. I've been taking it for years. Guess what? You've been watching, for the last 5 years, or more. Some people have been watching me longer than 5 years. I don't seem to be aging too much. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. Follow my protocol. Take my advice. It's a holistic approach. It's not just supplementation. It's about proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, challenging your mind, doing balancing exercises, yada, 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 right? But it's a holistic approach that works. So thank you for listening. And please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So I'm going to do the shutdown now. Thank you. I appreciate everyone watching tonight. Have a nice night.